Okay, so coming up next, wanted to share a story today because some of our best health discoveries come from unexpected conversations with other people. And about 4 years ago, a new member came to visit me and get started at my studio, and she looked around at all the pine trees surrounding us and she was like, oh, wow, are you harvesting the pine pollen? And I had no idea what she's talking about. I'm like, I'm not really sure what you mean by pine pollen. She was like, are you serious? You run a wellness place here and you've just got all this pine pollen and you aren't doing anything with it. You've got so much of it. And then she started to tell me about some of the benefits of pine pollen and suggested I go home and do some research, which I'm going to get you, I'll encourage you to do the same once you hear a little bit more about it this morning, but go in and do your own research. But that conversation completely changed the next few years for me. Around about now, which is the time of harvesting, it could be anywhere from sort of early July to middle of July to late July or even early August. But I've been harvesting for the last, I think, 4 years now from the property, and I've been taking it myself around about 3 years. Now, I have really noticed some significant changes for me. Now, I'm not saying that you should rush out and buy it, but I am saying to become curious about it, to find out a little bit more about it, read the research, ask your healthcare practitioner. It is just, obviously, it's not a medicine, but maybe just check in anyway. I've tried it for myself and I've paid attention to how it's made me feel. And personally, one of the things that I noticed immediately on taking it, and I'll explain to you what it is and how you take it and all of that. But basically, it's a powder. It's a pine pollen powder. But since I've started taking it, and when I first started taking it, I noticed an improvement in my energy levels, like within a day. It was significant. And it was like, I'm pretty high energy anyway, but it was I noticed that at the end of the day, I found myself just continuing to do more and more rather than feeling exhausted by about 8 or 9 o'clock. I just felt like I could just keep going all day. But also over the last couple of years, as I'm moving through a stage of life with changing hormones, I've also feel it's had a really positive effect, other than all the, on top of everything else that I'm doing to look after my health and wellness. But I've noticed, I think it really has helped me a lot. So that's my personal experience. Yours could be different, but that's why I always encourage you to go out, find out about it yourself. But I think the most important thing is to find out things about us, about what's available to us, and that's what this show is all about, is introducing you to some new ideas, making you curious, trying new things, and getting out there and finding out if it's the right fit for you. So firstly, what actually is pine pollen? So if you've ever looked at a pine tree around about this time of the year, they're the cattail pine trees though, you'll notice there's little sort of clusters of yellow clusters, like little yellow flowers, I guess, hanging from the branches. And these are the male components of the tree, the male cones, or they're called catkins. And their job is to release pollen into the air so it can reach the female cones, which eventually develop into the pine cones that we're all familiar with, which are the really big woody pine cones. The catkins are quite small. They're quite small. They're probably like the size of your thumb, sometimes even half the length of your thumb. But they're about the size, and they produce a fine yellow dust, which is the pine pollen. And if you do start to notice at a particular time of year, you've probably never paid attention to what time of year it is or what it is, but there's a yellow dust that's covering cars, maybe your decks, footpaths at certain times of the year, and that's the pine pollen that does get released. What's fascinating about this, and this is what this member told me, was that it's only available to you for a very short window each year, about 2 to 3 weeks, when the male cones, the male parts of the tree are releasing their pollen. And if you miss it, then you've kind of like missed it for another year. So it's the time where I start harvesting and collecting. It takes just a couple of windy days, and all that pine pollen is gone. And depending on how many trees you have around you, like on a good wintry day towards the end of winter at these months, I can just see sort of like waves of this dust falling out of the trees, and you're like, oh no, and you're thinking to yourself, how can I throw some bed sheets down and collect this, which it doesn't quite kind of work like that. I will tell you how I do collect this pine pollen, how you can harvest it. But the trees release it naturally into the air, which is why you'll often notice either your car covered in just a bit of a fine yellow dust at this July, sort of August time of year. And as I said, that is the pine pollen. And when I know the season has started, I sort of kind of free up some time on the weekends and during the day. I try to do like an hour each day. Because the thing is that when I first found out about this pine pollen, she did say to me, oh, Snej, I can't believe you're not, collecting and giving it to your members and teaching them about it. And I thought, oh, this is such a great idea. Yes, we should do this. That first year that I found out about it, it was sort of it was like right in the middle of the season. So we only had a week to sort of go, what is this stuff? How do you harvest it? Find out more, do my research. I kind of missed that season. The second season, I tried to get more into it. I thought, yeah, I'm going to collect a whole bunch of stuff, a whole bunch of pine pollen, and I realized that it does take a significant amount of time. Now, the thing is that you don't need a lot of it. Like I use 1/3 of a teaspoon. I just put it into my smoothies every day. It doesn't have a strong taste. If you do smell it, and does have that flavor of that smell, of that beautiful smell of pine. However, it doesn't have a strong taste. I just add it to my smoothies and, every single day. You only need, as I said, 1/3 of a teaspoon. You don't need a lot. But at that time of year, so that first year I tried to harvest a whole stack of it, and it just took so long. And I just thought, no, this just doesn't work. I think you can just, do a couple of good days of harvesting to give yourself enough for a whole year. That first year, I think I had enough to take us out for about 1.5 years. But basically what I do is I take little scissors, little sort of rose cutters or any sort of flower cutter, and I just literally cut the catkins off. You need to be really careful not to cut off any of the spines of the pine tree itself. You want to do as minimal damage to the trees as you can. And then basically I collect them. If you collect them while they're really open, as soon as you tap them, all of that dust and all that pine pollen will just go everywhere. So you kind of come back covered in pine pollen. But if you cut them a little bit before they're completely open, I tend to just bring them home and put them on big trays indoors where there's no wind, in the sunny, in a sunny spot. And they tend to open over the next couple of days or over the week, so that you do get a lot more. But once I collect them, if they are ready to go, I just put them through a big sieve. Firstly, I'll put them through it's actually like a basket that you'd put like newspapers or magazines in, and it has got some netting around it. So I shake it through that, and then I put it through a second sieve just to get rid of all the other bits of it. And then I put it through a very fine mesh sieve to make it very pure powder, and it's just perfectly clean and beautiful. You don't need to process it in any other way. You basically need to just shake it out of the catkins, and what you're left with is this really vibrant yellow beautiful powder, which is pure pine pollen. I then store it in airtight jars. I pop it in the freezer where it keeps really well, because if you don't put it in the freezer, like it might have some moisture in it or whatever, and it will start to go moldy and you will lose your pine pollen. So make sure that you keep it in the freezer. It keeps really well. It can keep there for years, and it's important to I try and get out there as much as I can, because it's only available for those first couple of weeks once those catkins start opening, and then we try to get as much as we can to harvest until the next year. And I actually love the whole process, because it's one of those little seasonal rituals that connects me with nature. I have friends and family and some of the members coming, and we all do some harvesting together. It gets us outside, paying attention to the seasons, appreciating what's growing around us. And it's a reminder that some of the most interesting foods and nutrients and supplements we can come from what's around us and getting to know our environments that we're so lucky to live in. And for centuries, pine pollen has been used in traditional Chinese medicine, and over the past couple of decades, scientists have become very interested in understanding exactly what's inside of it. And researchers in China have found that pine pollen contains a wide range of naturally occurring nutrients, including proteins, amino acids, vitamins, minerals, healthy fats, and plant compounds, and other antioxidants. And these antioxidants are important because they help to protect ourselves from oxidative stress that everyday wear and tear on our bodies do experience, and normal metabolism and environmental exposures. And the researchers also describe that pine pollen has a nutrient-dense it's nutrient-dense natural food with potential as a functional food ingredient. And I've seen recipes online where people are baking with it. The thing is, it takes so much to collect it that unless you have specialized machinery, that you could probably only harvest enough for yourself to take as a third or half of a teaspoon every day for the next year. But what's really interesting about pine pollen, there are claims that it does have anti-aging benefits. What's really interesting about it is it contains naturally occurring plant sterols, so a very small amount of hormone-like components to it, and so it can impact, some of the research is showing it can impact increase the steroid levels in the body, which it's really important to also stabilize hormone levels. And to be honest, I think that's the benefits that I'm definitely receiving from it. But definitely more high quality clinical research is needed before those claims can be made, like a lot of research. But from my anecdotal evidence, I've definitely found I've got more energy. It's definitely smoothed out my irregular hormones, and I definitely feel a lot better taking it. So just a heads up, a bit of information and just giving you some curiosity around pine trees. But if you're lucky enough to have pine trees on your property, you may have an opportunity this year to harvest it yourself. So look up some more information, Google it, find out a little bit more about it. You'll often see pine trees in the Nillumbik area in public places. Just make sure you're being safe and appropriate if you are harvesting. But you can also buy it from the health food shop as well. So all health food shops will have it. So today's message isn't necessarily go out and buy your pine pollen, although I would, but it's more about just finding out more about things that can potentially help you naturally to increase your energy levels, balance your hormones, and increase your wellness. But stay curious, jump on and have a look at pine pollen and find out for yourself.